What's up, everybody? I'm Brooke Wright some more, and this video is going to be all about Final Fantasy from 1987. Now, this is actually part two of a series where I look at every Kingdom Hearts game that there is. So if you haven't seen that one already, then you just aren't going to be ready to understand what's going on in Final Fantasy like at all, unless you already played those games yourself. So if you're still here now, then I assume that you are all learned up from my last video and ready to get down to it. So the first thing that you're going to notice about this one is the title, Final Fantasy. And that's a little weird already, right? Because out of all the Kingdom Hearts games that we've played so far, I'd say that there are really only two I would call fantasy games, which are, of course, The Sorcerer's Apprentice and Snow White. So, a little weird to be calling it final after just two. But that's actually a clever trick that Nomura is playing on us, see? Because even though he's calling it Final Fantasy, he doesn't really mean that at all. In fact, this game is not only going to spawn a sequel the very next year, it's going to have more sequels than any other Kingdom Hearts game to date. I know, that tricky little weasel man. This is because he figured out that if you lie to people and say that you're not going to do any more of a thing, they'll just want you to do it again even more. I used the same trick in my last video when I told you that I wouldn't make any more videos like that if you didn't subscribe to my channel. That was a lie. I would have made this video anyway. I fooled you. I'm going to be playing the Game Boy Advance version of this game because that's the best version, according to a video that I watched on YouTube by Austin SV. So first of all, I'm seeing one really nice feature that none of the other games have had, and that's that this one lets me name the characters after me and my roommates. I have 4 roommates, and only 3 of their names would fit, but by a really cool coincidence, the princess that we're trying to save just happens to have the same first name as my last roommate, so that just works out. So far, this is basically a perfect game. You get to pick different classes for all your roommates too, but I just stuck with the normal ones because that way I knew what to pick for everybody. Yeah, so once you change the party leader to yourself, you go around the town and you buy equipment, and then you go outside to fight some goblins. I died right away fighting the goblins, and resting at the inn didn't revive me, so I saved up 500 gold for a Phoenix down, which means that everyone else leveled up way stronger than me. And then I died again, and I couldn't afford another one, so I just killed the first boss without me because I got tired of waiting. A little while after that, I found out there was a church back here that I didn't see yet. And you can actually revive people here for just 40 gold instead of spending 500 on Phoenix down. So, lesson learned, I guess. But at that point, I'm already being carried, and I'm starting to regret naming the characters after the people who pay my rent for me in real life, because now the game is starting to hit a little too close to home. I did already save the roommate princess from just the first boss, so I guess that wasn't as cool a coincidence as I thought it was either. It is pretty obvious by now, though, that there's like way more to do in this game than any of the others I've played so far. The gameplay is most similar to Donald Duck's Playground, but that game only had 1 town to explore, and this game has at least 2 because I got to a second town which was taken over by pirates. And while I was walking around town trying to buy better stuff, the pirates showed up and attacked me. And when I beat all of them because I'm so good at video games, they said they were really sorry and that I could have their ship, so now I'm the pirates. The world map really opens up at this point, but the town I stumbled into next didn't seem too far past where I should have been, because everything was like 200% more expensive. Elfheim is a town where everyone's elves and they're all very concerned about their eepy little prince. Although I'm not really sure what the big deal is. Like, what does a prince do for these elf guys? You ask me, they don't really need him. You can bake cookies in a tree just fine without a prince. So I just kind of left it there and found someone with a real problem. This guy's home got destroyed by dark elves. Wait, dark elves? Oh man, Nomura, buddy. Okay, so this guy thinks having his crown back is gonna help him somehow, which doesn't make a ton of sense, but that's just how kings are. Getting it back from the cavern didn't take too long. Here you go, bud. Oh, and he's secretly the Dark Elf King, and he's gonna kill me now. You didn't really have to lie about your race. Actually, not sure how I look under that hat anyway. I might be a Dark Elf. Thought this fight would be a lot harder than it was, but here we are. And now I'm not really sure where to go, but I got his crystal eye. And after wandering around for a while, I found the lady who owns it. She's up in this cave. I could have found the whole time, but didn't. She's also got all these brooms sweeping all by themselves, which is a pretty neat trick. Yeah, so she takes the eye from you and gives you this potion that can make anyone wake up. Ah, dang. I guess I was doing that Elf Prince quest this whole time and didn't know it. Well, maybe I get something cool for it. Update. I do. I get this key that opens a bunch of doors I've seen like everywhere. So my quest now is to go open those doors. There's lots of them. And there's just one more cave I haven't seen yet, way over here, which is a mine full of men in jaunty hats, just like the hero of Snow White. Except these guys all have beards. I guess the guy from Snow White could technically be one of these guys, and they're just showing that he's older now for continuity. I guess he could also have straight up been Link from the Legend of Zelda series because of this gravestone that says "Here lies Link," but I'm pretty sure that's not the case, or else I'd have already played the Legend of Zelda before this game. It's probably just an Easter egg. So yeah, those guys open up the map even more for you, and now you can go to all kinds of places in your boat. You just stumble around for a while until you find the next place. The encounter rate in this dungeon is ridiculous. I took at least 6 steps in a row, where every one of them had a guy on it, so that was really annoying. But it was only like that for the first floor. It actually got easier. I spent enough time going around looking for stuff that I was kinda too strong for any of the boss fights. And by the time I fought the Lich, I was really hoping for some kind of a challenge, right? I kinda got one later, but it kinda sucked. See, after the Lich fight is when you're supposed to go to Crescent Lake and talk to one of these 12 little dudes to get the canoe. But you can go here sooner than that, and I did. This was actually the first place I went once the map opened up. So I had already talked to these guys once. I even came back here and talked to the first 2 guys again after I did beat the Lich, and they said the same stuff, so I didn't waste my time talking to all 10 of the other guys again. There wasn't anything to indicate that I should. There was a little cutscene showing me that this Earth Cave was open now, so I went there. I fought my way through it until I got to a boss that was way harder than anything else in the game, and she killed me right away. So, figuring this place had optional dungeon energy, I moved on, sailed everywhere looking for something else to do, didn't find nothing, gave up, and went back and fought through all 4 pretty annoying floors of the dungeon twice. I actually did beat one of the bosses down there, and I still had nothing to show for it, so I gave up and looked it up in a walkthrough, and yeah, that was all a huge waste of time. An even bigger waste of time happened later when I found my way to the Hellfire Chasm by accident, which is another bonus dungeon that you can't leave without either finishing or dying. And I was stuck for hours on this map that's like a tiny little world map with an exit that you can't reach before I gave up and looked that one up too, and it turned out the solution here was to talk to a palm tree. So these bonus dungeons are pretty bad is what I'm saying, but the thing is they're not even in the original game. These were added for the Dawn of Souls version on the Game Boy Advance, which means they're probably the reason that I'm playing this version in the first place. Thanks, Austin. If you say one version of the game has more content than the others, it's probably the one I'm going to check out, you know, because usually I like content. Now, I don't know if I would have had to look it up in the first time or not, if that bonus dungeon hadn't been there to confuse me, but I definitely wouldn't have gotten stuck here. So they kind of designed it worse than the original when they added this other stuff. Is this like entertaining for y'all? Should I be like doing something wacky right now? So I'm not gonna walk through the whole back half of this game because it's really just collect all the crystals from here out. But before we skip ahead to the final boss, I do have just one final rant to say. This game is like actually good, gang. I don't want you to get the impression that I hate it just because I'm mostly complaining about it, but at a time where it was still normal to put out stuff like Ninja Hamster, well, okay, so that one's not really like a normal game. And also this was the same year that they released Metal Gear and Ancient East Vanished and Street Fighter and Double Dragon and Mega Man. Okay, so it wasn't really like the standout game that year either, but just this is a really big game. It takes a long time to beat it. And, well, okay, you're not really having a lot of fun for most of that time because you're just grinding through a bunch of enemies that are way too easy. But that's because it takes so long to figure out what to do that you're always pretty over-leveled. But the game does have a surprisingly deep combat system. There are all kinds of different abilities that most of them aren't really that useful, but okay, so the main thing is really the legacy that this game has, because it spawned so many sequels, and there are parts of this game that are introduced here that are really unique and that we still see all the way into the mainline games. Like, the menu-based combat system starts right here, and a lot of the spells have kept the same names to this day. And the little guy that I've been playing as looks just like Vivi from Kingdom Hearts 2, so that's pretty cool. And the fixation on kings and royalty also starts here, which, okay, honestly, nah, I don't really totally understand what this game's politics are, but I do kind of wish they'd have just left that stuff out. And this wasn't in the original, but in the version I played, once you get to Lefenia, they say that the airships were built by Sid. So before he was building gunny ships to fly through space, he was an early pioneer of airships, which are like a less cool version of the same thing. So there's that. Yeah, I would say that if you're a fan of the series, this is totally worth a play. Don't go into it expecting it to be like an S rank. It isn't, but it's probably the best one so far. Alright, so the final dungeon is big and kind of confusing, but all you really have to do is fight your way through it, find the stairs that'll take you to the next floor where you fight some more. Exactly the same thing we've done at every other dungeon up to this point. Along the way, you do fight all the other bosses, but they were easy then, and they're even easier now. Eventually, you do get to fight Chaos. Oh yeah, you're 2,000 years in the past now, by the way, I forgot to say that earlier. The whole dungeon is 2,000 years in the past, and the world is caught in a time loop. Great. So, Chaos in the original version only had 2,000 HP, which means this fight would have probably lasted like a minute tops. They fixed that for this version and gave him 10 times as much HP. So now it's a really long fight that actually requires some strategy. I died twice before I went all the way back to my old save and bought enough strategy to take him down. See, there's this spell Temper that doesn't even do anything in the NES version, and I just skipped right over it when I was getting magic spells, because, see, magic, okay, is divided into levels, and for each magic level, you can learn 3 of the 4 spells, see, and that goes for white magic and black magic separately, But when I promoted the gang to new classes, Liz and Maple also gained the ability to learn low-level magic spells, and I gave Liz Temper and stocked up on enough ethers to keep her casting them on Maple, because they don't stop stacking and they make her attack hit harder every time, and that's how you beat Chaos in the Game Boy Advance version. That's the whole video. You're welcome. Bye-bye.